I lost $2.5 million to a man who told me he loved me. $2.5 million. That number sat on the edge of my life like a cliff I didn't see coming until I fell off. It was my savings, my future, my safety. It was the roof over my head, the dream I had planned for my daughter, the quiet retirement I had told myself I deserved. I gave it away because I wanted to be seen, because someone promised me a life that felt like a warm room after a long winter. I gave it away because love whispered to me when everything else was silent. When he first messaged me, I thought it was a small thing, nothing more than a soft intruder into my ordinary day. His name was Daniel. At least that's what he called himself. His profile picture showed a lean man in uniform, a desert behind him, eyes shaded by sunglasses, jaw set like a man who had learned to carry responsibility. He wrote me like he had time, gentle, patient, with sentences that felt like steady hands. "Hello," he sent. "I hope I'm not bothering you. You have a kind face." I almost deleted it. I had heard of soldiers who messaged women because they were lonely, and I had shrugged those stories off. I was a woman who had been careful with her heart for a long time. I had been married, then I had been left. I had learned the hard way that kindness could be the softest place to land or the sharpest place to fall. Still, the message sat like a pebble I kept turning in my palm. It was only a hello, but it opened. We talked that night and the next, and then the next, and the pieces of ordinary time between us began to stitch themselves into something that felt like momentum. He wanted to know about my day, my childhood, my laugh. He told me about his son back home, about the small house he dreamed of building when this deployment was over, about the way he'd wanted to plant a tree in the yard and watch it grow. He didn't rush me. He didn't ask for pictures first or money. He simply listened. In a world that had taught me to shout for attention, his listening felt like an offering. I told myself, at first, that it was not love. It was companionship, a balm. But loneliness is greedy. It learns to take more than you intend to give. I found myself waiting for his messages. His words were the first light of my morning and the last hum of my night. We shared silly things, food, music, the names of dogs we'd once had, and we shared the soft danger of longing. He said, "When I'm home, we'll have coffee on the porch every morning." I said yes. Then, after months of careful tenderness, the first crack appeared. It was small, so small I almost missed it. "Baby," he wrote one night. "I hate to ask, but my account got frozen. I need to send money to my son's caretaker before he gets sick. Can you help with $600? I'll pay you back when I land." $600. The number felt laughable, almost charming in its smallness. Who could argue with that? He sounded ashamed. He sounded embarrassed. He sounded like the kind of man who would do anything for his child. I transferred it without thinking, because it seemed like a kindness easy to make. He called me his angel. He called me a lifesaver. He sent me a photo of a small sleeping boy that he said was his son and told me he had never felt such gratitude. The warmth that bloomed in me at that gratitude was like salt on an old wound. That was the beginning. The trick of these men is not in a sudden demand, but in the slow, steady escalation until your life has been rearranged around their lies. There was always a reason. There was always an emergency. A week after the $600, it was $2,000 for equipment, then $5,000 for a lawyer, then $10,000 for fees to free him from a bureaucratic trap. He told me he was being held up by red tape, by misunderstandings, by dangers he could not handle alone while he was away. He asked. I answered. "I want you to feel how easy it is to believe." He used the language of intimacy to make the requests feel like truths. He would type, "I wouldn't ask if I could fix it. I swear to God, I would never lie to you." He would say, "You are the only one I trust." He would tell me the color of his son's eyes like a painter naming shades, and I would send money while thinking, He has a child. His needs are real. When he comes home, we will make everything right. The sums began to grow. Small became bigger, became monstrous, without a single terrifying shift that might have made me stop. It was not like I woke one morning and sent $2 million in a single frantic sweep. It was hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. I refinanced a line of credit that I had kept for emergencies, because then his need felt like an emergency. I borrowed against investments, because the story of reunion seemed worth postponing cautious financial choices. People hear $2.5 million and think of stacks of bills or a single dramatic transfer. For me, it tasted like breath, sip after sip, until I was hollow inside. I can still remember afternoons when my chest tightened before I opened my bank app. I would count and recount statements, trying to figure out where I had crossed the line. I would accuse myself of being reckless, of being hungry for attention. But hunger clouds the mind. When someone promises you a future rich with care, you begin to believe the financing is temporary and the payoff is human. We tell ourselves this to sleep at night. It took me a long time to see it for what it was. Only when the messages slowed and then stopped did the fog clear enough to show the cliff I had walked off. One morning his number would not answer. Another day his profile dissolved like mist. I tried to email, to phone, to message through friends I'd been told were colleagues. Silence. Panic came first like a cold wave. Then, the accounting. I added up the wire transfers, the loan payoffs, the cash withdrawals, the credit lines. I sat at my kitchen table with paper spread like a forensic puzzle, and when the final number wobbled into place, I gasped. $2,500,000. I should have been able to say it and feel some measure of comprehension. Instead, the number felt like a weight lodged in the hollow of my throat. I felt lightheaded. The room tilted. Shame came faster than sorrow. How could I have been so despised by myself, first for allowing this to happen? Word traveled like poison. My children found out. The way their faces changed is a cut I still carry. Alarm, then embarrassment, then a protective fury that made their eyes look at me differently. I saw the conversations that followed, whispers behind bedroom doors, tight jaws, the long lists of practicalities where they once placed our family first. How did this happen? Why didn't anyone stop her? I understood their fear. What becomes of a family when a nest egg vanishes? But the sting of loneliness redoubled, because the people I had leaned on for comfort became pillars of cool judgment instead. Friends stopped calling. There were the inevitable quiet withdrawals. The invitations ceased. The coffee dates thinned. The text messages dried like a river in summer. It felt as though a collective judgment had been passed, and I was being punished for a crime no one thought to understand. There were days I wanted to crawl away and never be seen again. There were nights I lay awake listening to my house breathe and thinking of the ways my life had been commodified by the myth of love. I wrote letters I never sent. I walked in circles in my living room with the need to act burning in my bones. Self-blame is an unrelenting companion. It whispers that you deserved what you were given. Out of that corner of dark, something else crept in, something that would not allow me to stay silent. Anger. Not the kind that shouts, at first, but a low, steady furnace. It smoldered under tears and would not be doused. I remember the night I stopped crying and sat up instead, the liquid sound of my sobs drying into a brittle laugh. That laugh was the beginning of the plan. I won't lie, revenge tasted like medicine I wasn't sure was edible. I wanted the man who had taken my life to feel some measure of the ruin he had sown. I wanted him stripped of his easy lies and seen as he was, a thief with a phone and 1,000 false names. I also wanted to steal back some dignity. The law was slow, the police were cautious. And the truth was, I had been baited by a machine, an industry of human predators that profited from care. If I wanted justice, I would need to learn their grammar. I started to study everything about romance scams. I joined support groups, not simply to sob